Hello, my name is Michael, and in this video we're going to download, install, and set up Node.js for the very first time. Before we begin, let's just mention two quick advantages to using Node. First, the highlight of Node is that it uses asynchronous JavaScript code, which basically means that it'll run faster than code that doesn't use asynchronous code, and faster is always better. And second, Node is one of the 4 parts of the mean stack, which stands for MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node. Together, these 4 parts of the mean stack can be used very effectively to build powerful applications. We'll cover how to use Node with the other 3 parts of the mean stack in future videos and posts. Now, for the rest of this tutorial, we're going to focus on giving you a hands-on tutorial for downloading, installing, and setting up Node for the very first time. The world of coding can be really complicated, so I'm going to explain basically everything that I'm doing. I'm going to assume that you're coming into this as an absolute beginner, knowing absolutely nothing. So if you kind of know a little already, you might find that I'm going really slow, but that's why I'm doing that. I'm going to be doing everything on a Windows 7 operating system. So if you're using Linux or a Mac, this might not be as helpful for you, but it seems like a lot of people use Windows, so this will be helpful for them. Since this video was made later than a lot of the other videos, I'll be able to cover some things if they've changed since those earlier videos. And by the time we're finished, you'll be able to run Node on a local server in a browser window and print words to that browser. So let's get started. For this tutorial, there will be 12 steps plus a bonus step at the end. So now I'm going to run my screen recorder so you can see and follow along with exactly what I do on my computer. And by the way, this isn't related to Node at all, but I'm using a PowerSoft Screen Recorder Pro, which is a lot cheaper than Camtasia, which is the most popular one out there. Also, I'm recording my video with the Zoom H4n, which is an awesome external audio recorder. That was just if you're interested. So now let's get started. Step number 1. Download Node. So to download Node, we're going to go to the Node website at nodejs.org. Let me close this for now. Okay, so go to nodejs.org, and we should see this website here. And then we're going to click on step 2 is going to be install Node. So we're going to click on install here. And once we click on that, it should automatically download the appropriate version of Node for your operating system. As you can see, mine downloaded the 64-bit for Windows 7 here. So step 2, we're going to install Node now. So to install it, we're going to click on the file that we just downloaded. Mine says 2 here because I've downloaded it before. I'm just doing this again to demonstrate for you. So then we're just going to follow the on-screen instructions. So let's click Next. I accept the terms in the license agreement. Next. It's going to install Node.js in program files there. You can just click Next. Next. And then Install. And so now we're going to wait while the setup wizard installs Node.js. This might take a little while, so I might just skip ahead in the video while we wait. This thing might show up if you're running Windows 7, so let's click Yes. And then it's going to validate the install, updating, generating, all that stuff. Copying new files. Status. All right, now we're done installing Node. So we're going to click Finish. And step 3, we're going to first test to make sure that Node is working. Now that Node is installed on our computer, we can run Node commands from our command prompt. To open the command prompt, first click on the Start button, and then in the window or the box that says Search Program and Files, we're going to click right in CMD, And at the top under programs, you'll see a program called cmd.exe, which is going to be our command prompt. CMD stands for command shell, so CMD command. This is where we're going to be running our commands for Node. I actually currently use a program called git bash, which is basically a command prompt that allows us to connect directly with Git. But for this video, we're just going to use the standard command prompt from Windows. So after we click on cmd.exe, we're going to see this window, which is our command prompt. To check and make sure that Node has been installed correctly, let's type in node-v, like this, node-v. And the current version of Node should show up, and mine currently is version 0.10.35. And then we can also type in npm-v, and the version for that should show up. Mine is 1.4.28. And npm stands for Node Package Manager, which is what we use to install external packages to Node. There are a ton of external packages out there that do all kinds of stuff. So how we use npm just depends on what specifically we want to do. All right, so now step 4, we're going to create a directory for our Node projects. Now let's create a folder where we're going to store all of our Node projects, and this is going to help us stay organized in the future. You can choose where you want to store this folder or where you want it to be, but I'm going to put mine directly in the C drive. So I'm going to go to Computer, click on C drive here. I'm going to click on New Folder. I'm going to name it Node Projects. And I already made it, but I'm going to just replace that, I think. All right. So step 5, we're going to create a folder now for our first Node project. And so in our Node projects folder, let's make a new folder called First Node Project, which is where we're going to store the files or file for our first Node server. Step 6, we're going to create a server.js file. And let me just go back to the default for now, and then I'll explain what I'm doing in a little bit. So this is the default setting. We're going to go in First Node Project, and create a new. So right-click, go to New, go to Text Document, and we're going to name this file server.js. But we're technically not done because, as you can see here, the type of this document is still a text document. We want it to be a JS file. And the reason why is because Windows automatically hides known extensions at the end. So this is technically server.js.txt, but we can't see the txt because Windows is hiding it. So to make it show up, we're going to go to the Organize here, click on Organize in the top left just under the back button, and then we're going to click on Folder and Search Options, and then click on View here, scroll down to this thing that says Hide Extensions for Known File Types. We're going to uncheck that, and then click OK. Now you can see that it says server.js.txt, and we just wanted to say server.js, so we're going to erase the txt here, and it'll say, give you this warning, and it might become unusable, but we're sure that we want to change it because we know what a JS file is. All right, so now this leaves us with just server.js for our file. Now we can see that the file type is a JS file, which is what we want. And we can technically name this file anything we want, but since it helps to name our files according to what their purposes are, let's name this one server.js, since it's going to be the file from which we run our Node server. For this project, we're going to build everything from scratch so we can see and know everything that's going on. For future projects, we can use npm packages to give us a jump start on a project. Step 7, we're going to now write content in our server.js file to display hello world on a localhost server or page. First, we'll need something to open our JS or our server.js file in. I'm using Sublime Text, which you can Google and download. So let me just kind of show you. If you just Google Sublime Text, you can see this website here. And then you can just click on Download for Windows. So You can go ahead and do that and then come back here after you finish that. Just pause the video and I'll be waiting here. All right, so to open it, I'm just going to right click here. Oh, by the way, you might want to change the default opener for this by going to right click properties, and then you can click on opens with, change, and then you can browse for Sublime Text or wherever you downloaded it. Click on this and press OK, and now it'll open automatically once you double click on it. So I'm going to double click server.js and close these other ones that I had open right here. All right, so now we have server.js open in our Sublime Text window. Now, if we go back to the Node.js homepage at nodejs.org and scroll down a bit, we're going to see some sample code under the heading an example web server, which has a description that says this simple web server written in Node responds with hello world for every request. This is as basic of a Node server as we can get, but it's always good to start with the basics and build up from there. We want this code to be in our server.js file, and we could just copy paste it directly, but I would recommend that instead of just copy pasting it, we should type out the whole thing just to slow down and be able to process through exactly what we're doing so that we can recreate it in the future. So you can copy paste it if you want, but I'm just going to start typing this exactly as it's written on the Node website. So let's open this to the side right here and have this on the other side. And so first, let's start by typing variable or var http equals require parentheses quotation mark single quotation mark http single quotation mark parentheses semicolon. And this basically means that we are requiring or including or accessing the HTTP module, which will allow us to use the functions that are in the HTTP module, one of which is create server, which is basically the function we're going to use to, well, create our server. As you can see, it's helpful for functions to have descriptive names. So now let's type the next part. We're going to type http dot create server. Make sure the S in the server is capitalized, and then we're going to write parentheses function parentheses req res, and the req stands for request and the res stands for response. Basically, when we run our server, the first function that will be called will be the create server function. And then this second function inside the create server function is passed to the create server function and will run immediately. The req or request is if we wanted to request any information, but since we won't be doing that here, we're just going to be using the response argument, which is going to be the response to the function that was just called. So next, let's type the two responses we're going to have after we run this function. Let's write squiggly brace, enter. And we're going to type in res dot right head 200 comma squiggly brace content type text slash plain, and then close that. Res dot end hello world backslash n. Okay. So the response.writeHead part basically says that we want the content to be in plain text, and the response.end part basically prints the words hello world to the browser and ends the response to the function. That's all we're going to say for now. You can read more on the website if you want to learn more about exactly what these things are doing. All right, so now let's type at the bottom here. So go to this close parentheses. We're going to type dot listen parentheses 1337 comma 127.0.0.1, and that's basically the 127.0.0.1 is basically the address for localhost, and 1337 is the port that we want to listen on. And then we're going to end our code. Let's type that semicolon there with console node.log parentheses server running at http colon backslash backslash 127.0.0.1 colon 1337 slash and then close parentheses semicolon. And then we're going to save it. And so the console basically is technically unnecessary, but the console log will print the words server running at http colon whatever, that stuff, to our command prompt, which helps us know that our http server is up. So it's a good idea to include console logs in our code to help us make sure everything's running correctly. Step 8 now, we're going to navigate to our first node project folder from the command prompt. And so to do this, let's go back to our command prompt and navigate to our first node project folder. As you can see, right now, we are currently in my users /Michael folder. I want to get to the first node project folder. To do that, we're going to use the command cd, which stands for change directory. To go back or up one folder, we can type into the command prompt cd space dot basically means go back one. And so you can see now that I've typed that in, we're in the cd or the c/users folder. We're going to do that one more time to get back to my C folder, which is where the node projects folder is. And so now you can see I'm in my C folder or C drive. Now another command we can use to check all the contents of the folder we're currently in is ls, which stands for list. So if I type in ls, I can see all the different folders and files in my C folder. Mine's kind of a mess, so ignore the random folders there. As you can see, one of the folders that showed up is node projects, which is the folder that we just made. And now we're going to type in cd node projects, so we know that we can see that right here. We can just type that in, cd node projects. And so now you can see we're in the folder node projects. And finally, we want to get to our first node project folder. So we're going to type in cd first node project. And now you can see that we are in the folder we want to be in. And step 9, we are now going to run our node server from the command prompt. To run our node server, let's type into our command prompt node server. We could have also typed in node server.js, but the JS is unnecessary. And since our server.js file has that console log line, we should see that in our command prompt, the line server running at http://127.0.0.1 colon 1337 shows up in our command prompt. That means that our server is up and running. Step 10, we are now going to open our server in a browser window. Now for the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time to load our server in a browser. To do this, let's first open up our favorite browser. I'm using Google Chrome here, which is awesome. Next, we're going to type in the URL address in our console log message. So right here, let me pull it up over here. So let's type in this address into our browser window. So I'm going to open up a new tab. And so we're going to type in http:// 127.0.0.1 colon 1337, enter. And you can see the words hello world in our browser. So we have officially printed hello world into our browser from our node server. Now the URL address that we just typed works, but it's not very easy to remember. One helpful thing to know is that 127.0.0.1 basically means the same thing as localhost. So we can also access our server in our browser by typing in the URL address http://localhost instead of the 127.0.0.1. So let's try that. Let's type in localhost, which is easier to remember. And we should get the exact same message, which we do right there. So that's a little easier to remember. Now, step 11, give yourself a pat on the back. You've just downloaded, installed, and set up your first node server and opened it in a web browser. This might not seem like much, but it's the first baby step towards doing so much more. Step 12, You'll notice that after we start our server with node server, we can't type anything into the command prompt window anymore. So we can't do that while the server is running. To close the server and be able to type into the command prompt again, we can press Control-C on the keyboard, which will close the server. So I'm going to press Control-C, which closes that. And so now I can type again right there. All right, now for the two bonus steps, or the one bonus step. Bonus step number one is we're going to play around with changing the words that the server displays to the browser by changing hello world in your server.js file to new words or your own words. For example, let's try, let's open this back up again. Let's try sending a custom message to the browser saying something like, let's see, I just set up my first node server. Hooray. And then we're going to save it. And then let's try to start up our server again with node server in our command prompt. And we're going to open up this window again. Now you can see our new message. I just set up my first node server. Hooray. So congratulations, you have officially changed it to your own personal message. And finally, let's try changing, let's close our server before we do that. Finally, let's try changing the message that gets printed to the console. So first, let's open up our editor again. We're going to change the, let's change the 127.0.0.1 to localhost, which is what we're actually doing. So that's going to change our message slightly. And then we'll just maybe add at the end, period, yay, exclamation point, just to, make it more exciting. So now let's try running our server again. Go back to the command prompt and type in node server. And now you can see server running at http://localhost:1337 period, yay. So that's all we're going to cover for now. In the next installment, we're going to take our Node skills one step further with Express, which is an awesome framework for Node that'll make writing code a lot easier. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.